So this is my History Wax Museum interview. Do you want to introduce you guys? Or do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
So I am Dave Hoschild, illustrator, ex-illustrator, retired illustrator, and now bicycle mechanic.
All right. What about you?
I'm Jennifer Hoschild. I am a graphic designer. Have been a senior graphic designer. I think I mentioned this before, but I'm a creative director at LKF Marketing in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
All right. So here's our first question to you. So what do you guys do for a living?
So these days I am a bicycle mechanic. For 30 years prior to that, I was a commercial illustrator.
All right, Jen.
I am a graphic designer by training. I have done graphic design for 24 years or so, and I have been a graphic designer, a senior graphic designer, an art director, and now I'm a creative director at a mid-size marketing agency in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yeah, Dave, you did that Kellogg's cereal box. Didn't you help design that part earlier?
I illustrated the Kellogg characters for many years.
Okay, that's fun. Okay, so question number 2 is why do you do what you do for a living? You know, what made you decide to go down that career path?
So with bicycling nowadays, I got to the point where I was just burned out on illustration and I wanted to do something else. And I have always been mechanically inclined, and I'm very much into bicycles. So that was kind of a logical choice for where to go because I love working on bicycles.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Jen, how about you?
I was continually fed art supplies by my aunt, who was an art teacher. And so I got pretty proficient at using tools of the trade, I suppose. And then when I went to college, I got interested into the different aspects of graphic design and printing. So that's how I got introduced to graphic design.
So, and then again, it's something that leads about like to careers. Like, who was like your top few people that inspired you to like go down this path?
For the bicycle thing, I can't really think of any specific person. It was more just my own interest. Of course, I learned things along the way from many people over the years, but no specific people in particular.
What about the art thing? Was there a certain person that you looked up to a lot and thought like, wow, I want to be like them?
I wouldn't say anybody that I wanted to be like. I know my high school art teacher was pretty inspiring, encouraging. I would credit him with a lot of that path. Beyond that, just there were certain illustrators who I liked their work, but I never knew them personally.
No, and it was more of like a thing where like you wanted to do something yourself, and it was more of like a personal thing where you're like, oh, I really want to do this instead of like someone else inspiring you.
As far as the art goes, I was good at drawing, and I was not good academically at anything else in school. So it was kind of like it felt like my only option for it's either that or digging ditches. So.
What about you, John? What was your main inspiration?
Well, I mentioned my aunt, who was pretty liberal with her art supplies. I also met a good friend of mine my first year of college, and her father owned a printing company. And she suggested that I check out graphic design because she knew that was one of the jobs that you could do with an art background. So I thought that was a pretty good idea, so I took a graphic design class, and it was pretty evident that I was going to do well there. It inspired me. It used my creative side and my analytical side. So it just seemed like a natural.
Yeah, I thought all right. And then the next thing is, getting off a bit of the path here, is what is your definition of Renaissance? And like this varies to person, but more of like the textbook definition is someone who like works in like it's like the art field, like whether that be science or like more of like traditional, pen on paper art. What would your definition be of Renaissance?
So I have always understood Renaissance person to be kind of a jack of all trades, a person who's very well rounded in their interests and abilities, and knowledge base. So versatility.
And you've done many things using your creative problem solving skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the illustration work was always kind of a challenging, this is getting off the subject here, but getting off creative problem solving, because, you would have a thing that the client needed to have accomplished, and so you'd find the best way to do that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with the mechanical stuff, whether it be fixing motorcycles, watches, or bicycles, which is stuff that I've all done, you're dealing with a mechanism that doesn't want to work, and you got to figure out why it isn't working and coming up with a way to make it work.
Yeah, so in that sense, fixing bicycles would also be considered like a Renaissance sort of thing because, you're doing something that requires creative thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So what about you, Jen? What is your definition of Renaissance?
Pretty similar to Dave's. Someone who has a curiosity about how things function, how things are put together, using your analytical abilities and your creative abilities to, problem solve. And then you just have a diverse range of interests, in my case, I love to garden. I love organizing things. I use that in my graphic design, problem solving. I am spatially gifted, I suppose. I can imagine things in like 3 dimensions. I ride mountain bikes. I earned my pilot's license. I just have a diverse range of things that I do, and any interest, I just kind of like go for it.
Yeah. So what do you think? Why do you think that what you do is important? Like, how does what you're doing help the world, in a way? Like, how do you think your creative path inspires people around you?
That's a good question. Well, if you think about my job as a designer in the marketing field, as the company that I work for is a business-to-business marketing company. We help businesses promote the products and services that they sell. So we help them get their messaging out to people who could use their services or would like to buy their products. So we help keep the economy kind of going in an efficient manner. How I inspire others? Well, I'm a creative director in my current career.
So maybe your colleagues will look up to you?
Well, hopefully. More often, I help guide what they're doing and help them see the end that they may not see, or help them to improve their design so it communicates better.
So you help them to be the best person that they can be at their job?
Yeah.
All right. What about you, Dave? What do you think is what you do? Why do you think it's important?
So these days, I keep people's bicycles working as well as they can so they can get out and ride, and enjoy a beautiful day and, pursue their fitness goals or get to work or whatever they're using that bicycle for.
Okay, so the next question is if you couldn't do what you're doing now, what would you do? Like, what would be your second option?
Boy, that's a good question. I don't know what that would be. I don't feel like I have a fallback.
Motorcycle mechanic?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I honestly don't want to do anything else.
You don't want to go back to illustrating?
No, that's a whole other world at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You've moved on. You're doing other things now.
Yeah,
Following your call.
that's it. Yep,
Yeah.
following my call.
All right. What about you, Jen? If you couldn't be your art director or something now, what would you be doing? What would you?
Golly, I could do so many things. I would love to work in a greenhouse. I would love to actually work in a architectural firm. I have a drafting minor that I've not used as much as I could have. I could really get into like doing like floor plans of houses or helping people decide like what color to paint their house versus the trim on their garage or around their windows, or help with like landscape design. That would be fun.
All right. And then one of our questions is, what do you think of the modern around you? Based on that you've seen a lot of art over the years, what are your opinions on today's art, this abstract and this realistic and kind of like anime? Like, what are your opinions on those types of arts?
Well, art is meant to engage you, to carry a message, to inspire people, to call attention to inequities, and there's always been another intersecting circle between graphic designers who work in different areas and graphic designers that work in marketing. We feel that since we are the people who create the messaging, we put images and words together to tell a story, we have a special responsibility to tell a story that helps society. So in that sense, we have a responsibility to society to use our powers for good. In the fine art arena, it's kind of the same thing. It's a nebulous thing, but it's all of that together.
Right, and just specifically, something I'm wondering about is that because you've been in that area for a while, have you seen what you're asked by clients change slowly on what stuff the world's going on? So your clients ask for something different. Do you see like a gradual change based on your time at that job?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And it depends on what industry you're talking about too. Some industries engage more with people on an emotional level, and they want a more esoteric or a message that will more connect emotionally with people. Other industries really want just the nuts and bolts. Here's what I have to sell. Here's how much it costs. So it depends on the industry, but I think people are in general, consumers and the people who sell and make things are becoming much more sophisticated, especially with the advent of computers, and there's just so much more competition in the world, and you can see so much more of it through social media and commercials and TV and all of that.
What about you, Dave? What do you think of modern art?
It's are you referring to fine art or commercial art?
I think in general, if you want to share your opinions on both of those things.
So one interesting thing, I was thinking about this the other day. So much of what I see kids drawing now looks kind of anime, manga in style, and it's easy to kind of curl my nose at that, because it's a stylistic funnel, maybe trap, if you will. But then I kind of thought back on when I was in art school and how all of us were doing stuff in a comic style. and how that drove the teachers crazy. And so it's kind of like nothing's really changed. It's just a different style,
Yeah.
and so that's cool. As far as during my illustration career, when I first started out as an illustrator, the work that we were producing was pretty much all hand done. And then the product that we would deliver was a piece of hard art on, paper or canvas or whatever. And so that was the art, that was the final project, and now the final product is a digital file. And so the which has actually given the illustrators far more control in a lot of ways, because you've got direct control over the color and all that. Plus you could create a file that was much more versatile for a designer to use.
So these programs open up a whole new world for artists that make it easier for them to do what they do?
It does, or at least more versatile in a lot of ways, because it's not, in some ways it's not easier, in some ways it's quite a bit more difficult, because all the work you're doing is almost by remote control, whereas with the old traditional methods, you're drawing, you're painting directly, you're doing it
Do
directly.
you think maybe that
Whereas-
helps you maybe hone in your skill because I can't just click this undo button, I have to live with that mistake I made if you did it in time.
There is that aspect. But the digital side of it gives you a lot more versatility to fine tune. And then when you're doing client work, it gives you a lot more versatility to respond to client changes, because clients always want to change the work after it's been done. And so it's much easier to be fluid with that.
Okay, all right. And
I will also say that the final end quality of the work that's printed is a lot better now than it used to be, because the illustrators have much more control over the color and what the final color will look like when at the printing stage of it all.
okay, so this one's kind of like similar to like the top question or a few of the questions, but I wrote down just what do you think like defines art? So for an example, this happened maybe around 2 years or 3 years ago, where they had this art gallery, maybe it was in New York or something, and they duct taped a banana to the wall, and it was sold for like thousands of dollars, and they claimed it as art. While I have duct tape in the basement and a banana, I could do that the same, and people are like, oh, it's art, it has meaning, and for some people it's like, no, it's not art. And what would your opinions be on that? Like, what would you think defines art in that way?
At that point, it's a concept. The banana and the duct tape itself is not the art, but the concept behind it is the art. I think they refer to that as an NFT, a non-fungible token. And so, but yeah, so much of fine art nowadays is, at least at the high end level of it, which ironically that banana thing is. On the one hand, it's merely a stunt, and on the other hand, it's pure concept.
I kind of wonder though if that guy had the person who bought the banana, did they put it up in the living room or did they just eat it?
I think I was just reading about this the other day, and I think the guy that bought it, or somebody ate the banana.
Yeah.
And then they took another banana and duct taped that to a wall.
Just to show you, it's all about the idea.
It's all about the idea.
Yeah.
I think the guy that bought it actually just ate the banana.
I'm
Yeah.
just gonna,
Yeah.
I bought this thing for thousands, well just let me eat it, alright?
Yeah.
So what is your opinion about that?
Well, I think Dave hit it pretty spot on, but I would add that not all art is meant to be permanent. Some of it is transitory, some of it is you're meant to interact with it in the moment. Some of it is stuff you can buy and hang on the wall and appreciate the craftsmanship, and other aspects of art are all about the concept or the emotion that it elicits or the controversy that it elicits, and it's meant to make us think.
Right. So, for example, like you could then say in this entire thing about Renaissance, you could say that a baker would then be an artist because or a person who makes wedding cakes because that is all about the presentation and how it looks like, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So next question is what do you think is the most important thing about your job?
Hmm.
What do you think is the most important thing that you can do?
I do so many things, but I think it all really kind of revolves around one of our earlier questions, inspiring people to do what we need them to do their jobs in the best way that they can, and whatever that might be.
So you're basically saying, that the most important job at your workplace is helping others become, the best version that they can be, and helping them to do their job at the highest level they can. All right, Dave, what about you?
I believe quality control is probably the most important thing. As a bicycle mechanic, and a similar thing as an illustrator. The person that's bringing you the work, whether it be a bicycle to fix or an illustration project that needs to be completed, is to fulfill their trust, because they're putting a lot of trust in you when they task you with this.
They want
thing.
something done, except they might give you a few guidelines, but they might envision it. And since you can't read their brain, you don't really know exactly how they envision it. So the thing you're trying to do is to get what they're giving you the best way possible that will satisfy the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have anything else to add to that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So the last one was, who do you think was your favorite artist? So like maybe for example, like as a kid, who's your favorite artist? Like now, who's like one of the person you look up to? Or not necessarily that. Who do you think like does really good work?
When I was in school, I was a big fan of Brand Holland's illustrations. He painted, and he also did a lot of pen and ink, cross-hatching style illustrations, which I've always kind of had a soft spot for pen and ink cross-hatching. Now, it's hard to say now. It would probably be another illustrator. I tend to like illustrator styles. I don't really pay that much attention to it anymore, though, to tell you the truth.
What about bicycles? What about in that arena?
Do you have anybody you really look up to in the work that you're doing now?
Like who makes the coolest bicycles?
What's a brand you really?
Most of them annoy me to no end anymore. So
Speaking like the ones, all biking ones, nah, they're not good.
I like them all, and I despise them all at the same time. So
It's a love-hate relationship.
yeah, it totally is.
I like blue bicycles.
Yeah,
You really know you like blue bicycles?
I like green ones actually.
What kind of green?
All kinds of green.
Forest green, light mint green, middle tone green.
Forest green and amphibian green is quite nice.
This new mountain bike is really pretty.
Green.
So a bike isn't green, it's not any good.
Oh yeah, I have good bikes that aren't green too.
So maybe that's green. Alright.
Yeah.
Oh, Jen?
Favorite artists? Oh golly. I have never been one to really catalog names or artists as a favorite. I appreciate so much for different reasons. When I was in school, I was just busy being a sponge, and I would just look at things and just take note of like how designers put things together, as a way for myself to learn. Nowadays, I guess it's kind of the same thing. House Industries does pop into my head. They're a design house, not an advertising agency, really, but they've had some really interesting designers work for them. And they had a show at the DIA not too long ago, and I went over there and walked through their show, and that was really fun and inspiring. So I think any of them, anybody and everybody, for different reasons.
I did think of a couple.
Oh,
Now that I've had to think about it, Egon Schiele has always been one of my favorites, and Kathy Kollwitz, also
Kathy
big favorite.
Kollwitz, yeah.
All right, well,
So.
do you have anything else to add before I conclude this interview?
No, I don't think so. I'm honored to have been interviewed by you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow.